Hey, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Level Up podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Petrinovich, and it's just me today on host duty by myself. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that I am not filming this with a high quality camera, and my background is a little different. And that's because I'm actually out of town. I'm in San Diego. So we're recording this episode on the fly. I did not want to reschedule. But we are still in the midst of our All-Star series here on the podcast. And today we are bringing on our guest, Rosemary of Rosemary Events, who is just such a wealth of knowledge. After 23 or 24 years in the industry, she has so much wisdom to share. And we know that you guys are going to love it. But without further ado, here is our episode with Rosemary. This is the Level Up Podcast. I'm Taylor Petrinovich.
And I'm Kelly Gilster of 618 Studios.
And we are on a mission to help wedding filmmakers and photographers level up their businesses so you can make more and work less.
We want to help you confidently take your business from mainstream to luxury, and it all starts right here.
Hey, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Level Up Podcast. I am here today with our special guest, Rosemary of Rosemary Events, and we are so excited to be chatting all things relationships with wedding planners, paying your dues, and so many other amazing topics. But first, Rosemary, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Beautiful day. Happy that the weather is starting to turn to sun. Things are going well.
I know. I love the late spring, kind of early summer weeks. I feel like, especially in California, there's only a few of those weeks before it gets so hot. So it's like maximizing that time when it's nice.
I know, it's perfect. And I feel like the flowers are more, it's like spring pushing into summer this year. We're getting beautiful flowers a lot later. So that's good for weddings too.
It is good. All the venues are looking their best.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So if the listeners have not yet followed you on Instagram or found your work, can you just give us a little bit of an idea of your background? I know you get started in the film industry, which is very interesting for a wedding planner. So we want to hear it all.
I did. Okay, so Rosemary Hattenbach, my company's Rosemary Events, and we are concierge wedding planners. We basically work with a small number of clients every year doing very high touch upscale weddings. I started in the film industry. I worked my way up. I started as a PA and finished as a line producer. But I worked essentially, I lived in the LA area and I found my way into film production and was very lucky to work with many A-list directors doing commercial work. So, it would be Gus Van Sant or Ridley Scott or somebody like that would be hired to film a commercial. Often this was like Super Bowl, things that are a little bit more high profile, and do these sort of short form commercials, for lack of a better description. Most of them are, Super Bowl kind of high profile things. And so it was actually a really great training ground, I think, to work with a really high level kind of crew and team, but in a short format. Films are often like months and months and months, and that was not really my experience. I was much more 30-day windows of doing production in the United States and actually all over the world. And I started as a PA. I, slowly worked my way up through production and learning the ins and outs of what everybody did. And ultimately I was a line producer and looked around and I was kind of ready for my next step. I wanted to start a family. I just knew that was just a transient lifestyle that I wasn't going to want to continue to do forever. So I started looking around for other things to do, and it landed in my lap that I had an opportunity to do an event, a corporate event for a TV channel that I was working for at the time. And I realized how much of a crossover there was between those two skills. And I started doing events. And then I slowly moved into social and weddings very organically, actually. Mostly because I wanted to have a little bit more control over my schedule and I didn't want the intensity of working in the film world anymore. Just kind of moving on to the next chapter of my life and having kids and things. So that's sort of how I got into weddings. And because I had had that rich background in production, I was very interested in doing things that were kind of very logistically challenging, in beautiful locations. I was very focused on the setting and creating something idyllic, much like I might have done in film. So that's really kind of the beginning of Rosemary Events. And I started down in LA. So I think I was able to earn the respect, even though I was relatively new in my business, of people that were from the film industry too, that recognized kind of where I'd been and how valuable that was. So that's pretty much my story. And 23 years later, I'm still doing weddings and I still love it. It's great.
That's so fun. And you had such a great point of being able to take a past experience and kind of recognize that certain skill sets really are transferable. And I think that's the same for anyone in the wedding industry, whether you're a photographer or filmmaker. Like there's probably something that you did in a job or in education previously that applies to the wedding industry. And it's kind of nice to see that. And it's an easy leap. It's not like you're starting from scratch, learning everything like from the ground up. You
Yeah.
can kind of like use it as a springboard. So that's really cool. Well, your work is just beautiful. And if people listening haven't yet followed you, we would highly recommend you go check out Rosemary's Instagram. It's very inspiring stuff. But I would love to kind of talk a little bit about this concept of paying your dues, because so many people in the wedding industry, and obviously this podcast is mainly for people who want to make that jump from the mainstream market to the luxury market, but it's not necessarily doing yourself a favor or your clients a favor or your creative partners a favor to jump too quick or jump before you're ready or not put in that time to pay your dues. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I had a bit of a unique situation because in a sense, I paid my dues doing something other than what I am now doing. Obviously, I've since extensively paid my dues in the wedding industry, but at the time, I mean, quite honestly, I was pretty brazen, and I tried to look around and see if I could find someone that felt like they could be a good mentor. But for my specific situation, I was a little bit less, I was less able to, do anything but really hang out my shingle, because it was sort of like, okay, I've produced things at Dodger Stadium, like how I feel relatively qualified. Having said that, I was still very cautious in the beginning to really take on more than I could chew. Like I wanted to always surround myself. I mean, there's a few different ways to go about this, but I always wanted to surround myself with, I felt, people who were much better than me, who were experts in their field, and really soak in everything that there was to soak into. I mean, production and being able to create a really amazing event is one element of doing events, but there are so many other layers of awareness. I think, you're dealing with people, and I'm specifically talking about weddings here, but you're dealing with someone's day that has so many interpersonal layers, so many important elements of etiquette and flow and timing and all of the things that go into that. Yes, maybe you've picked up a camera, or you have that skill. If specifically talking to photographers and videographers, it might not be that you understand the cadence of the day, or it might not be that you know how someone's going to react in a particularly sensitive or intimate moment. And I think that there's really no way to learn those things without going through those experiences on your own. And obviously I understand wanting to jump forward and get, because there's a lot of really smart and talented people in the wedding industry. But I think that especially in the luxury market, there's so much that can go wrong. And frankly, the stakes are pretty high. I mean, when people are spending this kind of money on their weddings, more than likely they're pretty successful in their own right, and they're very capable professionally, and they're sharp and they expect perfection. And if you're not able to deliver that just yet, you can actually do more harm than good. I mean, and not only in, maybe burning bridges with people that are in the wedding industry, creating a mishap that could be potentially legally an issue. I mean, there's so many things when you're talking about somebody's one and only day of their entire life that cannot be redone. So my personal feeling is that it's really important to take it slow and master what you're doing, understand your audience, slowly move up towards what you want to do. It's tempting to see and think about the numbers that you might be making working in a premium market. The thing is that there's a lot of reasons why people are being paid those dollars. And, it usually comes down to extreme professionalism and level of execution and the ability to deliver something in a perfect way. And if you can't do that, it can really backfire for sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So actually, inside our mastermind program that's going on right now, yesterday we brought on Sarah Falugo to talk to our students.
Okay.
And this is
She's
kind
so
of something that
talented.
we were talking about. She's so great. And she kind of brought up the point of why would a wedding planner take any risks on somebody that has not been vetted in the industry? Like the stakes are so high. These are, $1 million events. Like why would they search outside of their circle of trust? And so I think that raises the question for so many people, that like, okay, well, if wedding planners are really only hiring from a select number of pre-vetted creatives in any category, because the stakes are high for even florals or makeup artists,
Absolutely.
everything. So how do we get in with them? And I think that kind of thinking is actually a little backwards. Because I don't think the answer is to get in with the planners who are already at the top.
That's
The
right.
game is finding someone kind of on a similar level who is as hungry for growth as you are, and building that relationship and growing kind of together. And then in 5-10 years, now you are both,
That's
at
right.
the top. I think
I mean,
that's
honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself because, many of the people that I'm working with now are people that I have known for many, many years and who have a proven track record of delivering the goods. And, the thing is I think it's more about finding the people that are like-minded. And I don't know about you, but I can usually tell when somebody's an up and comer. I can tell when they're dialed in, when they treat their job as a professional endeavor. I mean, I certainly do understand that when you're starting something out, it may not always be feasible or financially possible to only do that particular thing. I mean, you might have to do it on the side, on the weekends, or whatever the case may be. But in terms of the way that you present yourself, the way that you treat your job, the way that you conduct yourself on a wedding, all of those things, no matter whether you're working on a lower price point or a higher price point, all of those things are going to send a message to all the people around you at the level of quality that you're trying to attain. And I think you're going to see like-minded people that are projecting that same thing. And, you know, it's really best to be surrounding yourself with those people and sort of working together and moving forward together. I mean, I honestly, it makes me feel kind of bad when I get a candle from someone that I don't know, or even the numbers of messages that I get on Instagram saying like, we want to work with your company. And I mean, I applaud the effort, but it makes me feel guilty because I know that there's really no way that I can bring them forth to a client without having some proven track record. And I feel like I wish they'd just spend their time on other people where they're going to have a little bit more of attraction, and that I'm someone who many years ago, somebody told me professionally, that you should always respond to everybody who reaches out to you. And I think I've always really tried to follow that spirit. I haven't always been perfect, but I've definitely tried to respect that somebody's taken the time to reach out to me and ask, you know, at least for me to look at their portfolio or whatever. But, you know, the busier you get, the more difficult it is to do that. But the other thing is that a lot of times I'll get things and links to people's work that it's clearly not where it should be to be working in the luxury market. And I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I do feel like you really have to take a good hard look at what you're capable of, where you are in your career, and find people that are like-minded and doing things that are in that same tier. And again, you can rise together when you're ready. It's interesting because I worked on a wedding. Oh gosh, it's been a while. It's been like 5 years. And the person that I did the wedding for, really nice couple, but he was involved in one of the big platforms, tech platforms or social media platforms, and was really like geeking out on video. So that was like his thing. He really wanted to do video, and he was like, I'm going to find these people and they're going to be involved in the wedding. Well, when we showed up on the day, so I really had no involvement at all. And these guys, I mean, I think they had all the cool equipment, but I'm not sure they fully understood the environment that they were walking into. And, you know, it's time for the ceremony to begin. And all of a sudden it's like, it felt like we were in Vietnam, like with like choppers. Like I was like, what is going on? There were drones everywhere. It was such a crazy moment of, and I think if it was with anyone else, but this particular client who was so into, you know, that particular bell or whistle of like, that was the most important thing to him, was video. But honestly, it completely lost the intimacy of the moment. All the people that were sitting in all the guests were basically like completely distracted, as were the couple, by this complete production. I mean, we got great drone shots, don't get me wrong. And this was like, I think it's a lot more discreet now, but at this time, like it was like new and exciting.
A
And maybe
big
it was
drones.
even more than 5 years ago. It could have been. But anyhow, you know, it was one of those moments where, okay, yes, he maybe had the skills, but he didn't have the awareness and the understanding of like what exactly was going on there. It was a complete cringe moment for me, because obviously that's not something I want happening. We're interested in things looking beautiful, but we also are trying to create an environment and a complete experience. And I think if you walk in not really understanding the rules of the road, you know, I can just tell you, like, I'm still completely traumatized by that experience. And I would never, if anybody called me, I would basically say, don't work with those people, you know? And so it's in that one moment. And I think they kind of, you know, they realized later, they also weren't dressed appropriately. You know, there were just a lot of things that told me how much they didn't really understand what they were walking into. And you know, I'm sure they're really talented people, but ultimately that was kind of what I was left with.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just a big believer. I mean, I paid my dues, and I think everyone else should too.
Yeah, I think that for video specifically, I think photographers have a better handle on this overall as a discipline, but videographers tend to be very into the gear and very into getting like the coolest shots. And I do think overall, we have a bad reputation for a reason, to be those people, like the guys coming in their polo shirts and their big gear, and that's not necessarily serving the clients or anyone else who's there very well. And actually, that's a big reason why Kelly and I, we have this podcast, we have our course, we have our mastermind, and none of it is technical skill at all. It's all the business side, and such a
Yeah,
huge part of it is the etiquette. And sometimes
right.
you don't know what you do. you don't know what you don't know until you know it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
we're
that's
bringing
right.
all those things to light to help people. And the amount of aha moments we get of like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, but I would have never thought of it that way. I think it's really helpful for people who are pursuing the luxury market because you don't have to wait until you're there to start acting as if you were there.
That's right. That's
I think it's
right.
to get the reps in of being your most polished, best business self before it's a requirement
That's right.
at these high levels.
And frankly, you never know who's going to be in those environments, who might see you and who might know something. I mean, I recently just, and it was too bad. It worked out that this person didn't end up being the person, but one of my clients found, a name of somebody she wanted to work with from a friend who had basically hired someone in a completely like a lower price point, but she liked the video. Ultimately, she didn't hire him because he only was there on his own, and she didn't. I flagged that I was a little worried about coverage because I didn't know like who's going to be with the groom, who's going to be, it's like learning all those things and what are expected. It made me feel bad because honestly, I was felt good about the fact that he had sort of found this recommendation. Honestly, he's walking into like a really nice wedding, and I'm sure it would have been a great opportunity just in terms of like what they were covering and the whole experience of the day. But ultimately, he lost out because he didn't understand what was expected in that market. And I mean, a one camera setup is just not going to cut it. Like, you know what I mean? So it's too bad, but I think that even just him having that awareness and being able to kind of cover that off, he might have gotten the job. But he didn't because he didn't really understand what would be expected of him. If that
Yes. And
makes
so
sense.
I think that a lot of people think to themselves, this is very true, like, oh, my work is so much better than that person. Why am I not getting hired for the job? And it's really not about the work. I mean, your work has to be good, obviously, like
Yeah,
it has to be great, but there's so much more that goes
there is
into
so much
it
more.
than your work. So if you're listening to this and you've been so focused on just the next camera you want to buy or the next shots you want to try out, like maybe pivot your thinking to strengthen the other sides of your business, and it'll help you out in the long run. Okay, this is actually something I've been kind of wanting to ask a planner, and this is my first opportunity to ask one.
Ah,
So,
I'm scared.
uh,
What is it?
no, it's not bad or anything. So vetting, like the idea of someone being vetted is obviously a big thing. Trust is huge, especially at this level. What goes through your mind when you come across new creative partners who have maybe worked with your colleagues that you feel are like an equal level as you? Like, do you feel like, okay, I saw this person work with this person who I've never heard with, like I automatically trust them? Or what kind of goes into that thought process?
Well, I mean, I definitely think it validates uh my concerns that they understand the environment that they're walking into. I mean, again, there's so many layers of etiquette, appropriateness, like, being a fly on the wall, like all of the things that feel important to me. Understanding that they've just seen what that looks like and they know what that kind of level of production involves is important, but I would never just leave it at that. Like I would probably always pick up the phone and find out,
That was gonna be
you
my
know,
next question.
oh yeah, I'm always, you may or may not be surprised. I mean, we all talk to each other. We know who other people are working with. You know, we all share stories. I mean, we share information. I think it's not like we're sitting there like, conspiring like, oh, that was terrible. But it's not like that. But obviously, we're all doing destination work and we're going into new markets all the time. And we're going into maybe this person's not available or, our client doesn't like this or whatever the case may be. We all lean on each other for support in that way. Where should we go? Who should we call? Is there anybody local that we might, that might be a good experience? And I think, we all help each other out in a way that, can be good or bad for a person in the industry trying to make their name. It's definitely a small industry. And I think people do talk, and especially if you're doing like 6 weddings a year and they're just extravaganzas, or, you really need to trust and listen to your colleagues and figure out kind of what they're saying. So yes, definitely I would email. I would text anyone that I might see that they've tagged on their, I would always look at their Instagram. To be honest, I guess if somebody had like no followers, I might be concerned about it. But me, myself, I mean, I've managed to have a certain level of success, and I don't even have 10,000 followers yet. And that's essentially because I don't spend all day, every day doing social media. I could be significantly better at it than I am, but, you know, I do want to know, like, are other people following this person? Is
Yes.
this someone who has a name? Because of course we can all see if you go to somebody's Instagram and you see that there's only one person that you know that's following them, that would raise an eyebrow. But mostly it's just hearing firsthand. What did you think of this person? How did you do it? And absolutely, I would not just go with the fact that they worked with something. I would pursue it a bit further and get to know a little bit more about what I was walking into. I also am a big one on rapport between photographer and videographer.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I think that for me, I guess because I have such an extensive film background and I learned from film people, I really do understand what makes somebody's life miserable from a photography and a videography perspective. And even when I'm looking, and you might even see this in my work, I'm always looking at setting. I'm always looking at lighting. I know that there are people photography wise who maybe are great in low light, like who maybe are better with daylight, who I would go to if I was doing film, who, all of the things that we have to know and understand, I think are important. But to me, it's also just ease of working with someone. How quickly are they turning around images? Me personally, and this is probably why I have under 10,000 followers, but like, I'm not someone who's going to make you stay up all night for the most part and be like editing a video for the next morning. Like, to me, I would rather have something 4 days later that has a little bit more thought and care.
Actually,
But,
really quick, I'm going to interject there because this is
yeah,
actually, I want to talk about this. Do you follow Nancy Narking on
yes,
Instagram?
I
Okay.
do.
So she brought up such an excellent point. So I'm sure you know, like Alex Cooper got
Yes.
married recently, and she's
Yeah.
host of Call Her Daddy. Great podcast, by the way, if you haven't listened. But
Slightly racy, but
it is very, yeah.
yes.
Listen at your own risk.
Yes.
But she did like a series on Instagram stories talking about how they didn't do next day teasers, they didn't like rush the content being pushed out, and it
Interesting.
still got all the eyes and all, like, it's time to shine when those images and video clips were published. And I actually thought that was really cool. And in her, you guys, if you're not following Nancy Narking, go follow, because she's
Oh
truly
my gosh, absolutely. I
um
send every potential client to that because I'm
yeah,
like, okay, I'm not going to break the bad news about how expensive your wedding's going to be. You can go look at it here in
yeah,
writing.
yeah, it's all transparent. Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, she was talking about like the balance between how quick something comes out and the quality, and what are we sacrificing. You really can't have super super fast and super super high quality all at the same time. So I feel like there's such a balance. And if someone's listening to this and like you're just not a fast editor, you're not, like, don't kill yourself to like turn out a subpar product the next day if it's going to be so much better 72 hours later or
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
Just because you see your peers doing it really fast, like, you don't know the level of support they have. They may have a full-time editor on their team who that was their job. That's all they did. Where, you know what I
Exactly.
mean? So there's so much kind of going on behind the curtain that we're not aware of. So I would say keep the blinders on, stay in your lane, and don't feel pressured by what you see other people turning out. Just just for the sake of feeling like you have to do what everyone else is doing. Anyway, that's like my
Yeah,
little
well,
rant.
actually, well, since you're mentioning that, I'd actually like to mention one other thing,
Oh,
which
okay.
is related to that. And I think it is, there's a lot of perspectives on this, like, okay, we're all there for the client. We're doing, we're creating these images for the client. I mean, I would argue that there should be full coverage of all of the things, no matter what. Yes, the planners are going to have things they're going to want. The client is going to have things that they're going to want. But, prior to us getting on here, we talked about privacy because, of course, as you get higher in the marketplace, you have more and more people. And actually, this would go into my Instagram woes, which is a lot of stuff that we do, we can't really share because we've promised that we will not do that. And we are, protecting the privacy of our clients. I also think that there is a special nature to the fact that we are all working on weddings. We're capturing really special, intimate moments of people. And I don't know, I cringe a little bit when I see things coming out at 8 o'clock in the morning, the day after a wedding, and the bride might not have even woken up yet. And it's like, wait a minute, like this is their moment. And it's such a privilege to be able to create these really incredible experiences. And obviously, when you've done something for a year, you're so proud and you want to show everyone, like, this is what we did this weekend kind of thing. But at the end of the day, this is somebody's private moment. And they're being generous with letting us share these things on social media. I personally think like you've got to step back and hold back and be like, here are your photos and give them an opportunity. Like maybe they don't want to show that photo, or maybe there's a moment that is private to them that they didn't realize was private to them until they saw it. And I think that just jumping the gun on being so, marketing, obviously we all have to market. We live in a very visual society and this is how we get our business. But I think to your point, if you do it 5 days later, 4 days later, a week later, it's not going to change, you know, who's interested and who's excited about seeing what you did last weekend. And it also preserves the trust that you have with your client and that respect that ultimately we have such a unique opportunity to be a part of something that is really special. It's not like a corporate event where nobody really cares. They all go home at the end of the night and they're excited about what they did. I mean, this is going to be something that they look back on for their entire lifetime. And those are their friends. Those are their moments. It's frankly their money that they spent to do all of those things. And even though you've worked really hard and you definitely have reason to be proud and want to show, I think you just have to check yourself,
Yes, no, totally. Actually, so that is something I used to be guilty of. It's been a few years since I've done this, but I used to turn out the next day teasers and post them on Instagram before ever sharing it with the client.
Uh,
And I cringe that at the thought that I used to do that. Like, what a horrible, honestly, what a horrible experience for the client. They may even be like on the airplane on the way to the honeymoon, and they're not going to land for another 8 hours. So like it's already racked up thousands of views before they've seen it. Like, think
that's
about how
right.
people feel. So that's something that Kelly and I teach our students, and like make sure they really understand is that there is a kind of like a rollout on how to deliver it. And it always starts with emailing it to the client first.
Yeah,
They
that's
need to
right.
see it first.
Well, and
And
the
then
thing is that it's funny. I mean, I have people who are like, are we going to get it in Vogue? So I don't know. There definitely are people that want everyone to see and they don't care. I just think that you can't presume that to be the case. You do have to make sure that maybe there's a conversation beforehand if you want to do that. Is this okay? Would you be okay if I did this in advance? I just think like I had a photographer that I worked with years ago, extremely talented. You probably would all know who she was. But this client was super private and she posted photos of their engagement on a blog. That'll tell you how long ago it was. I mean, it was a blog. It was like one of the WordPress blogs, like through Google, like it was old. Um, it really changed. I felt like she didn't protect their privacy. And, it was just unnecessary, to be honest with you. I'm sure hardly anybody even saw it, but it made them feel very compromised. And from even though she was extremely talented, I never worked with her again because I personally didn't feel like I could trust that my clients were safe with her, her image, their images were safe with her. So, I mean, and it's true. Yes, the photographers own the images. We all know that, but at the end of the day, I think these are people's lives. And I think it's a unique characteristic of working with a wedding is you're into people's intimate business, you know what I mean? And we have to treat that with care, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. I would love to really quickly
Are we
pivot.
going on and on? Because I'm super chatty. I know. Sorry.
No, no, it's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think sometimes the rabbit holes end up being the best
Okay,
part
good.
of the episode. So no, it's
Yeah.
so great. Okay, so let's say somebody's listening to this and maybe they're just starting to dip their toes into the water of working with planners, or that's something that's kind of on their goal list of to kind of get a few planners on their roster of who's referring them over the next few years. How can these people, both photo and video, best serve planners to, well, just honestly out for the sake of service, because we are in the service industry, that's great. But to build a really positive reputation for themselves, like what are a few things where you're like, these are non-negotiables?
Oh gosh, where do I even start with that? Well, first of all, it's all I would say this is true for every vendor that we work with. We want to give everybody the right environment to do their work and to have what they need. I think understanding what your needs are and being prepared, being very, very well prepared in advance with questions, with contracts, with all of the things that are, to your point, business related things. We're staring at a mountain of vendor contracts that we're reviewing, in addition to all of the other parameters from a venue and, of course, all the demands of a client. So like just going into the wedding in advance, having your ducks in a row about some of just the things that are the procedural things that need to happen. Like, when do you need to be there? What should you wear? Like,
That's a big one.
with the planner about what you should wear. I can't even begin to tell you the times that I literally felt like I needed to hide people behind the scenes wearing what they're wearing in a situation. Like I had a wedding last year and we had a videography team and it was a black tie wedding. And I mean, they showed up kind of looking like they were gonna go hiking. I don't
Mm,
even know how to explain it. And the thing about so with regard to video or photo, my feeling personally is that being unobtrusive is really important because you are essentially you're documenting the day and you shouldn't be a character in the day. You know what I mean? You should be,
very well said.
yeah, you
That
shouldn't
makes
be
sense.
a character in the day. So, years ago I worked with a guy, he was really, really tall. Obviously, I'm 6 feet tall. So if you didn't
You
know,
are?
I
I
am,
did
I'm six
not
feet
know
tall.
that.
Yes, I am. I have a very tall family too. We're huge. We
I am
walk
5 feet tall.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, so I'm 6 feet tall. So believe me, I have compassion for people who are tall. My son is actually 6'8", believe it or not.
Wow.
That's a whole nother podcast. So anyway, but yes, we're tall people. I have complete compassion for tall people. But the thing is we had this guy and he went in to do like a reverse shot and he was towering over like the backdrop. And I know. And these are like, you go through your career and you have all these random experiences that just help you form your opinions about how people should behave. But, he had come from, I think a film world background and he was he was a friend of the bride or something like that. So he wasn't a guy who normally would have been in that situation, but he really changed the moment of the entire ceremony by not being aware of himself and how he related to the surroundings. And I think that would be kind of like my number one, aside from all the business aspects, is just how do you behave in the environment that is happening? Like, are you aware if you're blocking people? Are you aware? And yes, you do need to get the shot, but I think you also need to understand that there's a sacred moment happening, and how can you do both of those things and do them unobtrusively? So I'm big on being unobtrusive. I'm also big on just looking like you are sort of blending in with the surroundings. Just in terms of communicating with your partner, whether that be like your videography partner or photography partner. I've definitely had some experiences where things have gone significantly longer than they should have gone because there's not synchronicity in terms of the team, like with the team, as far as like, okay, first we're going to do this, no, let's not have the bride do that thing all over again because you didn't get the shot. Like, maybe you're just going to have to move on without that shot or whatever. Like, being aware of how you're impacting the overall scheme of the day, I think is so important, because the fact is like, I would say the number one reason we get behind is because of photography. If we do, and honestly, we don't get behind that much because we've tightened up our operation significantly. So we know where to look and where to, kind of prevent those things from happening. But in the past, I definitely think that there have been moments where like things take too long, people go really far, whatever those things that are happening when you're in that moment, like capturing the amazing light. I get it. I love it too. But there might be an entire ballroom of people that are waiting for that couple to come back so the evening can begin, so the first course can get served. So like, I'm really big on keeping to your timings, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of kind of your the footprint, for lack of a better word, that you're leaving anywhere. I love it when people say like, I didn't even know where she was, but like, this is so amazing. Like that's a great thing to hear about someone who's doing video. And then also just in post-wedding stuff, I like it when people are, and this goes for really all vendors, that you're checking with us if like before you're posting, because there are times when there might be something that you're not aware of that somebody doesn't either want to see, or, God forbid, there's a wrinkle on the table linen. I don't know. I don't really want that out there. We're all presenting our work in the best possible way. So I think we all have to support each other, give each other a shout out, check in with the planner, make sure you have everybody you need on social media, all of those things. I think, just being a general team player and understanding all the, components that go into creating a really well orchestrated event, those things, there are many parts of those things, but those things are really important in leaving with a great taste in our mouth, when we're like, wow, that person was easy to work with. They totally were on it. They were on time. They look great. Like, I love this film. Like, they sent me images, like all of those things. I think it's a collective whole of those kinds of experiences that are going to get people talking and are going to get people recommending you and calling you again, and, telling their clients that they are in good hands with you. I mean, ultimately that's what it's all about, right?
That's so great. And actually, I noticed that several of those points really do kind of full circle moment back to the paying your dues. Like you only can gain some of those points through experience and repetition and kind of like staying on timeline, like, and not getting lost in the art. Like some of those things naturally will just filter themselves out as you do more weddings, higher end events. You know what I mean? There's a natural progression that just kind of happens, which is really nice. And it's not that it's impossible to learn those things a little bit quicker or on a more fast track, but just rest assured that it doesn't have to be that fast, and it'll happen very easily and naturally if you just keep your eyes open and you're aware.
I mean, I would also say, and that's something that just popped into my mind. It's important to know what you're walking into. So like, I love it. And listen, I don't always remember to ask a photographer about this or a videographer about this. But I love it when somebody asks me for a design board and I can walk through like some of the important things to me, and that they can really know those special moments, you know, rather than just reading the timeline. Like, go a step further, like without being annoying, because realizing that we're all like probably working super long days, especially leading right up to an event, but really knowing like, okay, this is so important. Like this, you know, groom rehearsed a song that, you know, he's going to sing to his bride. Like, take the time to really know what the story of what you're walking into, so that when you walk in a sense, you have, and this goes more for video, but also for photographers, you have your storyboard almost like in your brain going through, like, I got to get this, I got to get this, I got to get this. I want to make sure I don't miss this moment. You know, all of those things, when you leave with that finished product and it's like, you've got all those things. I mean, the client's happy, we're happy, you're happy. We can tell a story for publication, which is another layer to this. We haven't even gotten into publication. I'm not sure we should, but anyhow.
Yeah.
It's
No.
all interrelated.
What's that?
It's all interrelated.
It is. It's like a big web. It really is. Yeah. And one thing will absolutely affect something else that's down here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm doing like hand gestures. Okay. This is
Wait,
amazing.
it's not doing that thumbs up bubble thing.
Oh, great.
Oh, good. Whatever. Zoom is becoming weird.
Zoom is so funny. Yeah, it's nice in a casual conversation, but when you're using Zoom for business things and those funny little things pop up, it's
yeah, I know. It's awkward to say the least.
Okay. This has been amazing. We're going to wrap it up right here. That's enough for people to kind of chew on, and that's a lot of information. This has been amazing. If somebody has not yet found you online or connected with you, how can they do that?
Oh, well, rosemaryevents.com, ROSEMARY events with an S at the end.com. And then at Rosemary Events on Instagram. Those are really the main two places that we are. I have a TikTok, but I don't do it very often. I'm afraid. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rosemary. This has been
welcome.
Thank you for joining us in today's conversation. Please help us reach more filmmakers and photographers like you by taking a screenshot and sharing it to social media. And don't forget to tag us at The Level Up Co. And join us again next week, same time, same place, as we continue to level up the industry together.